The transboundary characteristic of the GOM could complicate the global ecosystem management. In your opinion, what is the situation in regards with the fisheries management?
Well, the Gulf of Mexico is by nature a very complicated ecosystem, as it just in terms of its ecology and its biology. One thing that adds a level of complexity is when you have two governance systems that are both functioning within the ecosystem. And, so one of the things that's challenging is when you have two governance systems that are functioning within. Each of those governance systems have their own set of regulations, their own approaches, different styles of fishing, and different thresholds for when they believe that the fishing requires additional management. Absolutely, that makes it more complicated. This is why the Large Marine Ecosystem program within the Gulf of Mexico is such a useful program, because it gives us the tools and the infrastructure to overcome some of those challenges and do a better job of managing collaboratively.
Great. And finally, what are your expectations from this regional international forum as a EU stakeholder?
My expectations are quite high. We are working in the marine ecosystem, but you can't do a good job of that unless you have a very good understanding of what's entering that marine system from the terrestrial inputs. And the vehicle for that, the highway for that to happen, are those river systems. So to have our scientists, our managers, our academics together working on this issue of problems like non-point source pollution and hypoxia, and understanding what they've learned from their studies and how that influences progress that can be made in the larger Gulf of Mexico basin is going to be very valuable. So my expectation is that through these presentations it stimulates a good dialogue, and those dialogues come up with the next good idea to help solve some of our common problems.
¿Cuál considera usted serían los principales aspectos de oportunidad que México como país tendrá con el proyecto del Golfo de México?
Bueno, considero que uno de los principales aspectos en los cuales podríamos reforzar esta cooperación binacional que ya ha iniciado es precisamente en el aspecto ambiental, hacia el cuidado de los ecosistemas en el Golfo de México, con base en las experiencias de los proyectos que hemos realizado por parte del gobierno mexicano, mediante proyectos llevados a cabo por la Comisión Nacional del Agua, en conjunto con el Instituto Mexicano de Tecnología del Agua e instituciones internacionales de los Estados Unidos. Una de las principales acciones a seguir puntuales sería la parte de la contaminación. La contaminación del agua creo que es una línea que nos preocupa a ambos países y que afecta de manera directa, incide de manera directa en el ecosistema del Golfo de México. Otro punto importante sería precisamente ver la manera de cómo generar algún acuerdo o cooperación binacional México-Estados Unidos con las distintas instituciones para este cuidado de los ecosistemas, y ver de qué manera se podrían llevar a cabo acciones conjuntas, por ejemplo, de monitoreo de los parámetros de calidad del agua, o también de reforzar el desarrollo de las bases de datos binacionales.
Dr. Robert Diaz, according to your experience in different types of marine and freshwater habitats, what could be the Gulf of Mexico particularities that should be taken into consideration in order to develop the most appropriate strategy to reduce and mitigate the pollution?
This is an interesting question that you ask. First, I think what has to be done is the Gulf of Mexico has to be looked at as one system and not as small parts. So it's a very large ocean kind of situation in the Gulf. So we have to start with understanding that all the small problem areas around the Gulf are related and can affect each other in some ways. The biggest single problem within the Gulf in terms of the environment and degradation of the water quality, I think would have to be the excess nutrients that are coming into the Gulf from all the watersheds that are surrounding it. And we see on the northern Gulf of Mexico near Louisiana, one of the biggest manifestations of this problem of excess nutrients with the large area of hypoxia that develops there every year that we call the dead zone. And that is directly related to events in the Mississippi and the drainage of the farmlands and the runoff of nutrients. We have a similar situation here off the Terminus Lagoon on the Campeche Bank here in Mexican waters, where there's a dead zone that is now forming every year, and it's related to a combination of factors, the industrial municipal discharges and also some of the agricultural runoff. So the clearest thing that we could do in terms of managing the Gulf to improve the water quality would be to reduce the amount of nutrients coming in. Second would be to improve the treatment of sewage to reduce the amount of organic material coming into the Gulf. And then third, we could look at the other contaminants that are more localized and can have some effect on the Gulf. So the number one issue, though, here in the Gulf, just like it is in other water bodies around the world, is excess nutrients.
Thanks. And could you share an experience where hypoxia or eutrophication problems have been solved?
Oh yes, there are lots of examples around the globe where management of nutrients and discharges have combined to improve water quality and reduce hypoxia or even eliminate it. A very good example is found in the United Kingdom in the Mersey estuary that goes past Liverpool, and there, almost 150 years ago, it's been this long that they've had problems with municipal sewage and hypoxia and loss of fisheries. But then in the recent time, in the last 35 years, there's been a plan to reduce the nutrients that are coming into the system with water treatment and cleaning up of discharges. And now the hypoxia in that system is gone, and the fish and the salmon are back, and it's much improved. So that's one example. There are lots of other small examples in the U.S. too, with the start of the Clean Water Act in 1972. That's what really started the reduction in small hypoxic areas in some of the United States rivers.
All right. And Dr. Diaz, is it possible to reduce water pollution without impacting the interests of agricultural sector? Do you have any experience to share?
Well, this is a difficult question to answer because the problem that we have currently is the way our agriculture is done. It's on a very large, massive industrial scale. It uses lots of fertilizers and other insecticides and fungicides to keep the crops healthy and going. And the total cost of using all these various components to produce food aren't really taken into account when we judge the value of agriculture versus other ecosystem services that we also are trying to improve, such as reducing hypoxia. So I think it would be to the benefit of the agriculture sector if they could reduce the use of fertilizers. It would make things easier in terms of the environment and also cost less to produce the food. And if they could control erosion, which is a big part of how nutrients and other material get into our rivers, and preserve their farmland. So for this to happen, though, it's going to really come down to the changing in the way we do agriculture.
Okay. And, well, we know industrial and municipal discharge and agricultural runoff could create hypoxia situation. In your opinion, which could be the sector that should be first tackled in order to reduce the Gulf of Mexico pollution?
all these are difficult questions. Again, to tackle the biggest problems that we have in the Gulf of Mexico with regard to oxygen, then it's the drainage of the Mississippi and the Atchafalaya rivers that create what really is the second largest dead zone on Earth, right there off of the coast of Louisiana. So the first thing to do would be to tackle that problem and reduce the amount of nutrients. There's lots of scientific evidence and lots of studies that show that it will take a 35 to 40% reduction in the nutrient loading to improve the situation there. So the trick, now that we know what needs to be done, the trick will be to implement this and get the agricultural interests to change the way they practice agriculture to reduce the amount of nutrients coming in. And if this could happen in the U.S., this could translate to a great benefit to Mexico, where the problems you have here are just smaller problems of the ones that we have in the U.S. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for all of your time.
Oh,
all right.
You're welcome.